For a while now, The Amazing World of Gumball has become a show that's beyond fast-paced comedy and colorful characters. Specifically after Season 1, the show began to take itself more seriously, with episodes tackling more mature themes that audiences could relate to and spoke to a lot of the things we face in real life, with issues centering around dysfunctional families, marriage, cyberbullying, politics, the need for community, and so much more. However, Gumball never came off as a preachy type of show. At least not to me. Its seamless blend of comedy and commentary is the reason why so many people have become fans of the show and its characters, and why it's so popular in internet culture. Throughout its nearly 15-year run and the recent release of its sequel series, fans noticed some of that messaging became more blatant, which has definitely sparked a lot of conversations since. But what if I told you that even before then, the show has tried to enlighten its audience on an impending issue that has made national headlines over the past year?
Applying to 100 different thousand jobs, applying to 10 to 20 jobs a day, ain't hearing back from no jobs, bro.
Parents, I don't understand why y'all don't catch the memo that it's not like how it used to be back in the day, but I'm telling you now, it is not how it used to be back in the day where you could quickly and easily get a job. It takes so much to get a job now in these days.
I'm telling you, I got rejected by Taco Bell and Sam's Club. Where are my bootstraps? Because I would love to pull myself up by them.
Yeah, this show about a blue cat actually tried to warn us about the current job market. And while it probably didn't resonate at the time of its airing, especially not for me, considering I was too young to even have a job when these came out, seeing all the different headlines reminded me of a few episodes from early in the series. And I'm sure if you watched the show, probably one of the first ones that already comes to mind was Season 2's The Job, but that's actually not the only one. Before that episode, same season, we had The Fridge, where Nicole encouraged her entire family to set goals for themselves to improve on throughout the week. Achieving these goals would warrant their picture on the fridge next to a star, and whoever reached the top spot by the weekend was deemed simply as the best. Not much of a good incentive if you ask me, but she had the right idea. Everyone was clearly into it but Gumball, being the only one in the family to simply not try because he didn't see the point. As a way to spark motivation and drive into her son, Nicole put Gumball through a bunch of insane trials, even going as far as to leave her own child out in the middle of nowhere, prompting him to walk thousands of miles back home. Once he did make it back, he noticed that his picture was placed right under the star on the fridge out of all of his family, something he even seemed to be proud of. However, the rest of the Watersons went crazy over the fact that Gumball, out of all people, would get a higher spot when they had all been trying way harder. Long story short, it led to a family battle royale through a game of capture the flag with a paintball twist. Gumball won, and he and his mom had a heart-to-heart about Gumball feeling like a disappointment because he couldn't live up to the standards his mom set up. Nicole, not realizing her son felt this way, expresses she could never be disappointed in him, and she only forced him to participate because she saw his potential. Once Gumball took the flag, the family went home, and that was the end of the star system. I get that Nicole wanted to encourage Gumball into being a go-getter, but I honestly gave her the side-eye in this episode because she saw how hard the rest of her family wanted her recognition and yet ignored them in favor of Gumball. In that case, why not give the person who deserved the star their rightful reward one week and give Gumball his pity win the next? All that chaos could have been avoided. Speaking of, I always found it crazy how the entire family crashed out over some stickers on the fridge, but in reality, it was kind of valid. Imagine trying so hard to go for the same opportunity as someone else, having the credentials that you would think would get you the things you strive for, only for it to all go to someone that didn't work as hard as you did or barely cared about it in the first place. A lot of people have noticed how difficult it is to break into a lot of industries nowadays, with entry-level positions asking for way too much experience when it's supposed to be the startup role. And even for higher paying roles, a lot of times the jobs go to people that the employer already knows, and rarely, if ever, the people who they don't favor. Regardless of credibility, nepotism is very real in the workplace, and it's the reason why a lot of people are unable to grow or feel validated for their hard work. Anyway, later in Season 2, when we do get to The Job, where Richard finally gets one, we see how disastrous things could become. The only reason I'm not going in detail about this episode is because it all centers around this fact, and every other scene that plays out is literally meant to flex the universal power Richard has inside of him. Him simply delivering pizzas for minimum wage caused the fabric of the universe to almost implode on itself. Thank God Richard is too incompetent to actually do anything. This man could quite literally destroy humanity if he tried. I always found it interesting why it was so bad for Richard to get a job. I mean, yeah, the whole joke of his character is that he's dumb, but plenty of dumb people are in the workplace. I think the simplest explanation is the fact that some people just aren't meant for that type of life. Everyone has their talents and strong suits, and just because you can't do a certain job or you can't get hired, it's not the end of the world. Well, unless you're Richard. But even for him, where he may not be the primary breadwinner of his family, he's shown to be a pretty good father to his kids and even a decent husband when his wife really needs him. This episode shows that life could still work out just fine even if you don't follow the traditional life stages that society set up for you. Life is different for everyone, and if you can find something you're good at, that's great. If you can monetize off of it, that's even better. Next up, we got Season 3's The Boss, and man, does this hit the nail of the video. The episode opens up with the Watterson family's neighbor, Mr. Robinson, mowing his backyard. Immediately after he finishes, his wife points out that the grass is uneven, which prompts him to mow it again, but he just can't seem to get it right. Minding their neighbor's business as usual, Gumball and Darren come along to help Mr. Robinson with his mowing issue, but end up making it worse. This causes Mr. Robinson to erupt in anger so much that the stuffing from his head pops out, spilling out profusely. Anyways, you could probably tell the injury was so severe that Mr. Robinson was sent to the hospital. However, the price of the operation is so expensive that he can't afford it on his own. So Gumball and Darren convince Mr. Robinson's son, Rocky, to get a job so he can help pay for it, which is so funny considering while Mr. Robinson was being transported, he insisted he didn't want his son's help, calling him a loser. He does this a lot through the episode, and I don't know what his problem is, but it's like he's convinced that his son has done nothing important in his life simply because they work in vastly different fields. This speaks to how much pressure parents put on their kids for not living up to the unrealistic expectations they set. Parents can have a huge influence on what careers their children pursue, and a lot of times are inclined to believe the idea of a job is the best option. However, I think Mr. Robinson completely misjudges his son here. Granted, throughout the show, Rocky is shown to work dead-end jobs and shares a lot of the characteristics of the 20-something-year-old adult that doesn't have life all the way figured out. But even though he's supposed to be depicted as lazy, Rocky's work ethic actually deserves him a lot more credit. At Elmore Junior High, he works as the school janitor, the bus driver, and serves food at the school cafeteria. That's already 3 jobs, yet his father calls him a loser. Anyway, the boys break the news to Rocky that his father's in the hospital. The news obviously hits hard, but he's also sad because even he knows his dad is disappointed in him. Despite this, Gumball and Darwin suggest Rocky gets a corporate job, and Rocky's body immediately repulses just at the thought, but goes along with it anyway. I'm not gonna lie, I hate that related to that. But specifically, when job searching online, the trio find that the only people hiring is a company called Chanex Incorporated. At this point, Rocky almost denounces the opportunity, as the corporation has been known for very problematic behavior, but with no other options, they decide to apply. Knowing Rocky is underqualified, the boys lie on his resume and communicate with Rocky to give all the answers for his interviews. Despite things seemingly going wrong, he lands the job for being just what the company was looking for: young, fresh, and gullible, with the interviewer immediately coercing him to sign the offer letter without any time to think. This scene was kind of crazy because during the process of getting the job, Rocky realizes there's a lot of sacrifice that came with it, signing away his hopes and dreams, selling his soul, and giving up all the time he could have had for his family and social life just to work for someone else. Back at the hospital, the boys let Mr. Robinson know that Rocky finally got an office job. When he asks how his son is doing, Gumball explains that he's overworked, underpaid, and downtrodden, even calling him soulless as the show depicts a scene of Rocky working tirelessly with no life in his eyes. What's even crazier was that only after hearing this was Mr. Robinson proud of his son for the first time, saying he finally became a man for working his life away. I mean, if this isn't the biggest representation of how boomer Gen X parents are with their millennial and Gen Z kids, I don't know what is. But what's funny is that even though Rocky is now able to afford the hospital bills for his father, he's too busy to actually go and see him. The boys insist they'll take care of Mr. Robinson in place of Rocky, and if you've seen the show, you know he hates them, so that causes him to lose even more stuffing, worsening his condition. The doctor demands that Rocky see his father immediately so he can help with the transfusion. The boys go back to Rocky's job to catch him up to speed, but another employee informs the two that Rocky can't go because he literally signed a soul away in the contract, even going on to say that because he signed the same offer, he lost out on all the memorable moments in his life, like his wedding, his kids growing up, even his own retirement. Realizing the mistake they made, the boys try to get Rocky's soul back and rush him out of the office building in these really dark, eerie hallways filled with filing cabinets and endless amounts of paperwork. And I gotta say, this scene is kind of layered. I took it as a really good connection between how it feels to work a job like Rocky's and being consumed in it. The work is obviously endless, but on top of that, your world can become so dark and shallow because you're so focused on fulfilling a quota for your employer's sake. You don't realize that you're giving your life away all for a check that can't even buy you back the time you lost to earn it. The boys confront Rocky's employer in an anticlimactic ending where the contract gets ripped. Rocky gets his soul back, and they're able to get him back to the hospital so he can help his father. After the transfusion, Rocky confesses to his dad that he can't be like him, working a soulless, dead-end job that leaves him without any time for his personal life. And with that, he's deciding to go back to his normal job at the school. Mr. Robinson seems to accept it with no pushback whatsoever, but in reality, his heart rate was rising so quickly in anger that it caused an explosion in one of the funniest endings for the show. But as lighthearted as that ending may have seemed, there was so much to this episode that really spoke to many different conflicts young adults face, especially today. With Rocky having to take on the job he didn't really move on just to support his father, it speaks to how a lot of young adults take on an array of responsibilities in order to support their families. A lot of times it could be jobs they hate, but if it pays the bills, they have no other choice. Also, Mr. Robinson constantly calling Rocky a loser is crazy, but it's the same way a lot of parents shame or pressure their kids into futures they don't want, just to be able to say their kid's a doctor or they make a certain amount of money or something. Parents can have a lot of influence on that kind of stuff, and if a child simply lets them, it leaves them with a job they hate or chasing behind a dream they can never achieve. It's not bad to have expectations for your children, but let it be for the passions they have. And the fact that Mr. Robinson was more upset at Rocky for not keeping his soulless job is crazy. Like, bro, your son worked to pay for your operation and donated to save your life. How are you still angry? But you know, with the first name like Gaylord, I'd be mad at the world too. Gumball as a show in general has a lot of episodes where they touch on deeper subjects, which I think mixed in with all the comedic and loony aspects of a cartoon sometimes gets lost or forgotten among fans. Even in episodes like The Money and The Check, where the Watersons are depicted as desperate for any cash they're able to squander, can parallel how desperate people in real life get when times are tough and their options are limited. Landing a job nowadays is seen as a blessing since so many employers refuse to hire, and it leaves people feeling hopeless, scared, and discouraged. And it's even worse when you're younger, asking for advice from your peers, and here comes an older, out-of-touch retiree trying to tell you you're not working hard enough, and when they were our age, they worked hard for everything they owned. However, what so many of them like to leave out was back in their day, wages and the cost of living didn't make life a constant fight for survival. When adjusted for inflation, you can look back in time and see that a lot of commodities like cars, houses, groceries were dirt cheap and more affordable to a household built off of one income, whereas nowadays, everyone in the household needs to pitch in just to make ends meet. The show even speaks to this discourse between generations with the conversations the Watterson had in the car from the episode The Kennedy.
Can someone be so grumpy going to a charity ball? Especially when it's about building a better future for children.
Yeah, one chocolate fountain at a time.
How are we supposed to raise awareness for the children of tomorrow if we have low blood sugar today?
Maybe your generation should have thought about our future before ruining the economy. And the environment. And the education system.
I think we had it easy. When I finished high school, all I had was $3 in my pocket. So what did I do? I bought a house, a car, and started a family. And the other $2 went into my savings.
You guys just don't realize, do you?
Someone else from the show that could add to this point is Larry. But a running gag for the show is that Larry worked nearly every job in Elmore. His jobs span across but aren't limited to fast food, retail, gas stations, supermarkets, movie theaters, car repair shops, and banks. And there's plenty more that I haven't mentioned. And as ridiculous as it may sound, Larry quite literally is the reason why the town runs as smoothly as it does. The show even played on this by basically centering an entire episode on the idea of Larry being fed up by the Elmore residents not appreciating him, and so he stopped working, which ruined their economic flow so bad it quite literally led to the destruction of Elmore. Beneath it all, I think that was the show's way of telling the audience to show their appreciation to everyday workers, especially those working minimum wage jobs like fast food and retail, because they are quite literally the backbone of society. And as many jobs as he worked, I'll never forget, in one of the earliest episodes, it showed Larry going home to a really small room that looked pretty old and unkept. Now, I don't know if this was meant to be an apartment or what, but I always found it crazy how he worked so many jobs but could only afford such a small living space. But that kind of tells you the lengths people go through just to make ends meet. It's honestly crazy how introspective Gumball as a show can be. And while some may feel like season 7 dived headfirst into the more meta, socially aware traits of its storytelling, I'd argue that the show has always been like that. I guess the past seasons were just better at hiding it. But that's all I got for this video. Please share your thoughts down in the comments below. Are you looking at these episodes any differently? Are there any episodes I might have missed? Do you feel like I was onto something with the messaging, or was I just reaching? Regardless, thanks for sticking to the end. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you on the next one.